I am happy to be here and excited to share some of what we're seeing in the age of the coronavirus and in the pandemic. I am born and bred in New York, so my general sense is I speak quickly. I will try to slow it down for translation purposes. So let's get into the content. We're going to be talking about three basic things today. But at the top of that, as a headline, we have seen rapid acceleration. The pandemic has taken 5 years of evolution and really condensed it into this past year. And we're going to look at that in three dimensions. Dimension one is changes in media consumption. Changes two is changes in the brick and mortar economy, in the retail landscape. And dimension three is changes in the retail experience. And at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about how IAB has pivoted or changed to acknowledge the change in the marketplace. So I will dive in. The first big headline to share is about connected TV. So connected TV has been the story coming out of the pandemic. Its usage has absolutely exploded during COVID. And what has that done? That has made more ad inventory affordable for smaller brands. So we have a whole new category of opportunity for advertisers in the age of connected TV. And I say that because if we think about the traditional television industry, it has been mostly dominated by the biggest brands in the world or in the US. So 200 advertisers supply about 88% of network television advertising in the US. Compare and contrast that to the digital world. Just one example, we could have used Facebook or we could have used YouTube here. There are 10 million individual advertisers on Facebook. It is the democratization of advertising. So we now have an ability for far more activity across a far deeper spectrum of advertisers and brands. A couple of things that we have seen in terms of usage during COVID. 6 out of the top consumer quarantine activities are media related. And you can see the bars that are in the red here, whether it's watching more shows or films on streaming services, watching more news, even watching more TV. As people have been home more, they've had more time to consume media. Things like spending longer on social media is another example, spending more time on computer or video games. So this is definitely the world in which the media world has seen a significant increase overall in the age of COVID. And then you ask yourself, is this just a moment in time, or is this going to be kind of continuing after we're past this pandemic? And from this data that we have collected, even after the pandemic is done, there will still be a legacy of activities that will be increased media usage, whether that is creation, creating and uploading videos, listening to more podcasts, listening to more radio, watching more films or streaming services or videos, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really a reboot acceleration, which is the name of this conference, which I think is perfect, acceleration of digital media in the age of the coronavirus. We have looked at media time for decades. How have consumers been using media? And there's just so many waking hours in a consumer's day that we've really topped off. We can't get any more time all up in terms of media consumption. So what ends up happening is you start talking about share. Which share of media consumption is growing and what isn't? And this is just an example of, if we look at TV versus digital video, from, let's say, 2020 to 2022, over the next 2 years, you'll see that the red bar, which indicates TV, will be going down in terms of overall share. And the digital video consumption increase will be about 7% from 2020 to 2022. You could look at that in a different way, slightly different way, in terms of what platforms are people using to consume this content. And if you look at desktop or laptop, if you look at mobile devices, or if you looked at connected devices, which is whether it's a connected TV, a smart TV, whether it's a little box that you plug in to kind of connect to your network, you can see that the trend clearly is the growth of connected devices in terms of time spent over the coming 2 years. So that there is absolutely no doubt that COVID has accelerated the connected TV experience a great deal. Just another visual representation of this. It's absolutely astonishing that you can look at when the quarantine began and how that has changed consumption. This is video streaming on OTT and connected TV devices in terms of households and hours by week. And you could see when the quarantines began, it's just a hockey stick or a mountain that has been created in terms of nearly immediate changes in consumption. And this is not just a video conversation, although video has gotten the majority of the conversation in the industry and among brands and marketers, but this is also audio. Streaming audio during the pandemic overtook traditional radio. And you can see here a data point before COVID-19, 55% of listening was on non-digital devices and 45% was digital. And since COVID-19, it has basically flipped. 47% is on non-digital, 53% on digital devices. And we're seeing an explosion of podcasts during the pandemic. Lots and lots on any topic that you're interested in. Podcasting has gone absolutely through the roof. A data point that's not on this slide, but just to let you know, in the US, our anticipation is that the podcasting industry in 2021 will break $1 billion in advertising support. So that is a momentous time for podcasters. Just another kind of data point to support what it is that we're talking about as it relates to audio. This is looking at total audio activity through July versus year ago, up 9%, on-demand audio streaming up 16%. So nice, significant, healthy growth in the streaming audio space as well. We have been doing at IAB a series of, we call them pulse or impact surveys throughout the year. We are just about to publish our 7th one. And what it has done, it has given the market, publishers, brands, agencies, a look into where is spending going. I cannot think of another year that has been more dynamic in terms of the planning, replanning, flexibility of how spend has been kind of panning out. So this is a piece of data that we got from a research study that we did in September. We just did one that's just not ready for prime time quite yet, but it's saying a very similar story, which says in 2020, overall ad spend, we predict based on what we heard from the market, will be down about 8% in the US. Digital will be up 6%, and traditional media, which is a kind of catch-all for lots of different channels, and we'll talk about some specifics in a second, will be down about 30%. So digital has been very, very resilient during the pandemic. This is a kind of, if you double click on that data to get to the next level of information, this is by channel. So once again, this is US data, anticipated 2020 ad spend, linear television down 24% in terms of dollars, CTV up 19, digital video up 18. And you can see that the channels that are taking the biggest hit in terms of declines, traditional out of home, not shocking. If people are not spending a lot of time outside of their homes, traditional out of home would be definitely one area that would be affected. Terrestrial radio, traditional radio, if you're not in your car driving to and from work, also not great for that industry. Direct mail and print, also not wonderful. Social media and paid search, which over the past decade has been a perennial, every year growth, very, very nice, healthy growth, continues to grow even in the age of the coronavirus. We keep hearing from the buy side, brands and agencies, that the benefit of digital in terms of flexibility and agility, the ability to optimize creative, the ability to close the loop in terms of measurement, and the ability to not be locked into commitments for a long time, has really spurred the growth of the digital ecosystem. The second topic that I wanted to talk about a little bit is the other big change that we are seeing is an entire reinvention of the retail landscape. And we have seen e-commerce growing nicely at a modest pace, both in the US and globally. But now that we have kind of shelter at home and folks are not going out to the store, COVID has accelerated the transition from a brick and mortar consumer economy to what we're calling a storeless economy by 30 to 600%, depending on the category. And this is going to have significant implications for all aspects of the digital business in 2021. So a couple of data points to support this. The US economy is becoming storeless. Physical store closings, if you look at from 2017, 2018, 2019, and what's estimated this year, will rise 3 times in 2020, estimating 25,000 US store closings, which is significant. Also, interestingly, if you were just to take a graph and plot when the kind of the stay-at-home happened, when the pandemic hit the US in force, which was about the March-April timeframe, this is a graph that shows the percentage of total retail sales that e-commerce or online retail represents. And you can see back in December, it was about 17%. It hit a peak in May at nearly 28%, and it has stayed quite high to be over 20% since then. So that's a fairly dramatic change in a very, very limited period of time. And that has had implications throughout the supply chain, whether it is delivery or logistics. It has really, really changed the game in the retail sector. This is a very, very interesting slide. It comes from the Financial Times and McKinsey, and it looks at by category. What does that composition look like in terms of consumers' use of online channels for retail purposes before and after COVID-19? And you can see historically some categories that have been quite low, groceries and snacks as an example, have seen significant growth over the past 9 months or since the pandemic hit. So pre-COVID and expected growth after COVID. If you look on the right-hand side, percentage growth in customers purchasing the category online has gone up anywhere from 59% to 7%. There have been some categories that have been largely online already, entertainment at home, books, magazines, and newspapers, etc. But others have experienced significant growth since the pandemic hit. Another way to look at this is US retail e-commerce share by category. And you can see the column that says pre-coronavirus Feb and post-coronavirus May. And there are some that have not changed dramatically, but some have absolutely exploded. Not surprising if you look down at office equipment and supplies, as everybody has been outfitting their homes to be their new office. We've seen significant growth from 26.6% up to 39.3%. Also, toys and hobby has been another very, very significant growth trajectory. And you can see at the top of the slide, other areas, apparel and accessories, also very nice, healthy growth. The other thing that's interesting to look at is small versus larger brands. In a world of e-commerce and in a world of digital, smaller brands have opportunities across many dimensions that they might not have had if we were relegated to brick and mortar retail as we have been in the past. If you look at leading brands, big brands in the black, and then small and medium brands in the middle in the kind of light blue, you could see the growth from 2016 to 2020, very, very healthy growth in the small and medium-sized brands. There is a whole conversation that we can have, we don't have enough time to do it today, about the importance of first-party data in the overall digital ecosystem. And if you think about direct-to-consumer brands, small brands which have been born with first-party data at their core versus established brands, which go through intermediaries to get to consumers, don't have a lot of first-party data. We're seeing that as another key driver of why small and medium-sized brands are growing at such a nice rate. Just one example, I could have had 20 examples in different categories. This is cosmetic retail sales, so cosmetics. If you look in the traditional retail environment, it has been dominated by the top 20 manufacturers, as you can see on the left-hand side, and then 4% by other manufacturers, not the big players. In the e-commerce space, it is exactly the opposite. 86% is dominated by the small, mid-size other, and then 14% is the big established, oftentimes global cosmetics brands. So e-commerce is the great equalizer for small versus large brands in market. Two last sections quickly, and then we can take some questions. Another kind of change that we are seeing is the definition of the store. The medium is the store. We see things like live streams, AR, augmented reality, social selling experiences are becoming more effective than physical stores, becoming brands' new competitive battleground. This is dated, so this is not up to date, but it just goes to show, this is from McKinsey also, that consumer experience is important. And if you look at performance, total shareholder returns of consumer experience leaders versus laggards, there is a significant business performance for consumer experience. We have seen that historically, and it has never been more true than it is today. After the COVID recession, the rewarded innovators will be mobile-centric. We have seen the digital industry move to a mobile centricity over the past several years. But if you look at retail e-commerce sales in the US by device, over time, you can see a nice steady erosion of desktop and tablet, and mobile, which is the red bar, growing very nicely. Augmented reality, if you look at kind of 2020 pre-coronavirus, 2020 post-coronavirus, up to 2025, will grow globally by about 200% to $4.6 billion by 2025. And we have seen augmented reality really being embraced by many large digital players. Snapchat, as an example, is kind of the crown jewel of AR in terms of marketing and advertising opportunities. But we're seeing this across many, many different categories, whether it's luxury or auto or travel, which has obviously been hit quite hard, entertainment, which has been hit quite hard. But augmented reality is a significant growth area for 2021 for sure. The last point on in this topic is live streaming. So anybody now on any large platform, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, live streaming is becoming the new mass vehicle. So, some of the largest live stream audiences could be 6 million people globally per event, and global live stream generated retail sales are expected to double this year to $120 billion. So live streaming as an area to watch. Is this the new television advertising? I will just finish up just with a little bit of not really a commercial, but just a little bit of how IAB has been evolving as well. And then I'll take some questions. So this whole topic of the direct brand economy, moving to a storeless world, separating the barriers between brand and consumer, separating the intermediaries, becoming much more agile in the way that brands are created and go to market, was something that IAB recognized in the US in 2018. And while we started accepting publishers into the IAB in 1996, we started accepting ad tech players in 2015. We opened up IAB membership to brands in 2018. Agencies are still, they can be associate members, not full voting members, but that's something that we continue to talk about and debate at the IAB and at the board level. We now have over 150, I believe it's 170 or so, incumbent and disruptor brands among our members. And if you were to just glance at this list, you'll see it's many of the large multinational advertisers, as well as some of the kind of direct consumer brands that have started as nothing and are now north of $1 billion businesses. So it's a nice, healthy mix of large and small brands. IAB and IAB Tech Lab has the ability to bring together brands, publishers, platforms, tech and data, and service providers, and many of the constituents that sit at agencies and marketers, whether it's a chief investment officer, a chief technology officer, a chief privacy officer, chief legal officer, et cetera, et cetera. So we really think about IAB as what we call a big tent organization. We have every part of the ecosystem represented, because some of the challenges that we face in the digital industry require every part of the business to collaborate and talk and work together. We also have 47 IABs on every continent. And I will just call out, we also have, obviously, our host today, which is IAB Uruguay. And that is just a snapshot of some of the things that we are seeing in terms of changes and acceleration in the age of the coronavirus and the pandemic. I welcome anyone to reach out just to connect. My email is david@iab.com. That's a very fancy email address, I know. And I'm on Twitter @mrdcohen if you wanted to follow me. But I will now use the next 6 or 7 minutes to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Bien. Bueno, muchas gracias, David.
Thank you, David, for the update you have shared. The truth is, it's extremely useful. I have a question in English. It will be translated from Camila.
If direct mail is not working anymore, what do you think will be or is the best way to connect directly and in a more personal way with the people?
In terms of
En términos
personalized advertising, is that what we're asking about?
Si quizás él tenga que leerle la pregunta en inglés, porque... Okay.
Okay, yes, it is personalized advertising. Personal.
Yep, I think that I mean, the beauty of the digital media and marketing ecosystem is that it is built on a foundation of the ability to personalize messaging. So, whether that is via social channels, whether that is through programmatic channels, whether it is leveraging third-party data or first-party data. I don't know if I could put my finger on the single best way to do that. Obviously, there are opportunities on the big platforms like Google and Twitter and Facebook and Amazon who have lots of really rich data about consumers. But there's other ways just on the open web in a variety of programmatic channels that are also very valuable.
Bien, tengo una pregunta.
Now, a question from Leonardo, who asks, in industries such as the pharmaceutical industry, how do you think e-commerce may impact on prescription drugs, medical prescription drugs?
Yeah, that is a great question. In highly regulated industries like pharmaceuticals, it's a little bit of a different story. And we're seeing kind of digitization of the in-pharmacy opportunity. There are lots of opportunities within pharmacy to kind of connect digitally. Big retailers, like in the US as an example, CVS, which is a big pharmacy chain, has in fact their own media network. So it's an example of how the seller or the distribution platform is becoming a media property in and of themselves. So they are leveraging the data that they have, obviously that is privacy compliant and privacy safe, and using that to potentially sell some of their media to outside pharmaceutical manufacturers to reach consumers. So it's an entirely new paradigm that is coming to the market. We're seeing that with other big retailers like Walmart and Target. So when the seller becomes the media platform is something that we're seeing kind of happen over and over again. But it's a very, very interesting area to watch. That's a great question.
Bien, la última pregunta es una pregunta personal. Recién mostrabas, David.
A last question, a personal question for you, David. You just showed how IAB works at global level. Publishers, ad tech brands since 2018. I had the chance last year of being at a summit in Mexico, and the focus of the different LATAM IABs were related to inclusion of brands, companies within that could be part of the different IABs in the region. What are your recommendations to brands so they can go to the IABs? What would be your recommendation to the brands that are in this transition to the digital world to be part of IAB?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Thank you. I don't think that there has ever been a time in our industry where it has been more important to have brands' voices heard as part of all of the work that we are doing at the IAB. And the learning goes both ways. IAB can learn from brands' experience in terms of connecting with consumers, what has worked and what has not worked. How have they leveraged data? How have they not leveraged data? How have they used programmatic, et cetera? So there's an entire learning process that we can gain on the IAB side. Similarly, IAB brings together the best that the industry has to offer in terms of technology and content and insights. And brands need to know that too, as they're preparing for a very, very different environment than the one that they have operated at historically. So my recommendation would be to have as big a tent at IAB as possible, let in brands and agencies and ad tech and publishers so that we can sit around the table and talk about, learn from each other, since no one has the answer, but we all have pieces of the answer. It's going to be a very interesting year in 2021, but I'm looking forward to it.